I'm really glad to see that those sessions were useful, and I'd love to learn more about, what do we do next year? Like, do we do a roundtable and a panel, maybe a live panel from our customers? Like, we just love to learn from you guys to see what's helpful as we try to support you in your Power Platform journey. So that's what got me excited about about the conference, Randall. I think there was a lot of product announcements that were amazing. I am biased. I love all the Power Automate stuff. So being able to see that you can do we now have Copilot agents, which there's an underlying theme of automation there. I love it. I'm super excited by that. I think that's everything. Did I cover everything, Randall?
You got a lot in there. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Bobby,
Okay, I'll hand it
do you?
over,
Yeah,
Bobby.
I
Sorry,
was gonna
sorry.
say
It's
we
okay.
can just skip me altogether
Yeah,
now. I'm
we
actually
can do
looking
that.
forward to talking to the folks on the line here. So, pleasure to meet you all. My name is Bobby Chang. As Randall mentioned, I'm a Power Platform Global Black Belt. So, hopefully, I have met some of you on the conference. If I haven't, nice to virtually meet you. Looking forward to just dive right into the discussion here and get kind of your thoughts and your feedback and your top of mind. Certainly got a lot out of the conference myself. If anything else, like it got me out of the basement. So always always thankful for that and being able to make connections with our partners, customers, and um, around talking about how to make Power Platform real in their day to day. So thank you so much for having me. All right.
Great.
Well, that
Thank
being
you.
said, I mean, I think we want to just start to jump at it, right? Like I'm looking at the list here. Maybe we start from left to right if it's okay. Is everybody present here, Randall? I don't know. I haven't really checked
Um,
on the
well, I know
attendance.
we've got. I don't want to volunteer people who didn't volunteer previously. So let's start with David and Gerald since they're here. I think Joe McAloon is also here, but let's start with David Dean. David, can you maybe share some of your likes, dislikes, experiences, so forth?
Yeah, so my name is David Dean. I'm from Centene Corporation. I oversee the team that oversees the people leader of the team that oversees Power Platform for the organization, from operations, governance, citizen development, centralized development, pro development, all the above. Um, and ultimately, this is my third year at the conference, so I've seen it grow and expand, and it's interesting on seeing how it's shifted from the kind of cramped quarters of the first Florida iteration of this, to basically, it just seems like it keeps growing and growing over time. More and more people are showing up to the conference, and it just seems like even from last year, there's like 20%, if not 30% more people at the conference. So that's really great to see. There's a lot of excitement around the technology and the platform. The things that I get, especially after the third year for me, is as well as my team, where we get a lot of value is around the roundtables and being able to engage with the product group and being able to ask some of those really, detailed questions with, peers and others in the space on challenges and things that, that the successes, the nuances on like the practicality of being able to roll out and manage the platform. And that's where we find a lot of those rewarding conversations, is being able to have those kind of more detailed, intimate conversations with a variety of different people. With that, that's where where we gain a lot of knowledge and opportunity there. I think the one thing I will probably say, after the 3 years of this, the one negative aspect I will say is breakfast. I will call that out. I think I think there's a lot of people disappointed with the breakfast around that. I know that's not a technology thing around that, but that's one thing I wouldn't be fair to call out around it. But with that being said, I had the opportunity to participate in the Power Platform World Tour back in 2019 as a speaker during that. And I would really like to see more speakers from the different businesses, and less managed partners overall, because I think all of us have a story to tell around some of these things. And I think that, outside of those roundtables, I think there's a story to be told amongst various different groups, and it's really interesting to learn about around that, not just kind of a general success stories, but even getting into some of the details around it. And I'll give you an example from one from last year. I think it was Canada, that had a presentation on how they've streamlined a bunch of things relating to Power Platform, and how they've kind of operationalized it, built a bunch of templates for all the different types of business units there, and they kind of got into the weeds of some of the stuff. They talked on some of the highly technical aspects of Power Platform on how they surface, and we found that very rewarding around ideas around that. So that's kind of my general comment.
That's awesome, David. I mean, it's really good feedback, and actually have noticed that even during the sessions that I had the opportunity to attend, right? Like it's a lot more impactful if we have a customer actually showing us like, hey, here's kind of what we've done with the platform and the capabilities and actual examples that can show without getting into potentially privacy concerns in a public conference, right? Like, so completely agree with you there. I think there's nothing that resonates more to all of us, even on the Microsoft side, if we can actually get a customer championing on that behalf. Would love to partner with any of you that could possibly bring this to a reality, right? Like if it's like maybe a round table with a little bit of a show and tell at the very least. If not, like if there is an opportunity to join up and partner up on a session too, I think that'd be a really welcome idea for sure.
Yeah, and I'm just curious. I mean, I'd love to get more engagement from the community here. For those that attended, how many of you felt that that was also something of value that you got hearing from other customers? If you could give me a heart, a thumbs up, it'd be great to see if that's a theme that resonated across our audience. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's great. That's great to see. It's good feedback.
It's across the room. Yeah. Thanks so
Yeah.
much. I think we want to just get to intro. So is Gerald is on the line here? Is can we or
Yes.
no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, he
awesome.
is.
Well, awesome,
Yeah,
Gerald. I
so
want to give the mic over to you, sir.
yeah, hi. I'm Gerald Oakley. I am the team lead under David Dean at Centene. So we both handle most aspects of the platform except for Power BI. I often describe it as Power BI and the rest of Power Platform live in the same house, but they have different rooms. They decorate them their own way, and they have their own guests. So that's typically how I try to explain it to our end users on the way it's kind of split up. And honestly, that split up makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think that a lot of my takeaways are going to be very similar to David's. I do think that the roundtables, full disclosure, I've been to all three conferences as well. And I would say the same thing as David. I think a lot of the fruit at the conference for me now is in those roundtable discussions. I mean, I hate to say it in this way, but it is definitely a little helpful to hear and commiserate with my peers in the same space. We all work in a very restricted area for the most part, and getting things off the ground and getting through some of that red tape is not always easy. And just hearing that the rest of our peers are also dealing with similar, if not sometimes the same exact issues, is definitely like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. Like, I'm not the only person that has to deal with things like this, because oftentimes in our jobs we do tend to be the experts. We're the ones that are doing all of the behind the scenes work, and there's not a lot of input from other people. There's not a lot of other experts in the company on it, so it's a lot of working through things. And through these roundtables, honestly, I hope to be able to do some presentations at some point about things that we've done to alleviate some of it. But yeah, I think that was a really good point. I was very happy to see that. I think a lot of the sessions were around how Microsoft is kind of implementing different tools on development best practices, things like the new designer tool that's coming out that helps you design solutions. I think that's really powerful. I saw some demonstrations on setting up test environments for building out custom connectors. I think that's really powerful stuff. You don't have to test when you go to launch. You can test right from your code. I think that's huge. I will say I was very surprised to see very few sessions on the COE and governance through the COE. I was very surprised by that. I think that we have a pretty good lock on it, but I think that's something that should be talked about more. Is proper governance through the COE, because it's a big one, and a lot of people still struggle with it, especially with the data export and the move to data lake and things like that. I know it was a major struggle for us to get through just because of sheer size. We are a huge company. Yesterday, I saw one of our dynamic groups with all of our users, and it was at 110,000 users. So, we solicit to all those people, and having that many apps and stuff come in through the COE was something that was hard to get through. And I think showcasing how to deal with a large inventory from the COE would be a big help to our community. That's really all I have. I think the roundtables are the big thing. Those are my favorite thing to go to. I like hearing them. I also really liked. We went to one. I forgot what it was called, but it was IT and the business, in talking to people how they go about guiding people and how they solicit their best practices and the problems that the business runs into and how we as an IT team can help. I thought that stuff was really helpful too.
Yeah, I think Manuela is gonna love hearing that, right? Like in terms of getting more sessions on the COE Starter Kit. I'm curious too, Gerald, like if because there were some sessions, unfortunately I couldn't attend a lot of them on governance, but with the introduction with some of the well-architected security and governance story, right? Like just, even beyond the actual kit themselves. Like I'm wondering if it would be helpful, I think to your point, like make it a little bit more practical, right? Like there's one thing where we might provide the framework and the tooling like the COE Starter Toolkit, it's the COE Starter Kit, but maybe it's another to actually make it more practical where we can have like a co-presentation to your point earlier of having a customer like, hey, this is how we do it, and this is what's been successful or might not have worked so well in terms of large data set like inventory and things like that, right?
Yeah, and I think that is a big part of it is, we as organizations typically operate slightly differently than the rest, just because of restricted data and how that kind of plays into everything. So seeing that implementation at like a restricted company, I think is a far different than just implementing it, right? Like following that documentation
Yeah,
isn't always hard, but doing it in a
absolutely.
restricted space is just completely different. So.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
one thing I do like to call out is we collaborated. Was it myself during the Microsoft conference back in April? Excuse me, April. We had the opportunity to connect with Disney, and we talked about like COE with Disney, huge company, lots of solutions, and they're like, we don't have the problems that you do because the everyday user doesn't have regular access to PHI data. So like some of our governance is radically different, our procedures are radically different than what you guys do for an organization and that type of thing. So it's really interesting, like them learning on some of the challenges we run into versus them. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes more into a point, David, of like the framework themselves versus the practical implementation that's gonna wildly vary, right? Like not just based on industry, but you can even still be in the same industry and have a completely different compliance and security posture, right? That's going to drive different implementation path altogether. So definitely good feedback there for sure. It sounds like we are yearning for more customer conversations, right? Or highlight or stories. I didn't go to as many sessions as I would like, but the sessions that I did sit in on, I mean, even had customer actually sitting in the front. I don't know if you all had an opportunity to sit in the Power Cat and Customer Advisory team, showcasing various successful implementation. One of my favorite was I don't know, I don't forgot what they're calling it, but it's basically a Gen X intern program that a company has done that basically let folks that not necessarily be working in the back office. So, thinking like the frontline workers actually get hands-on in these actual tech themselves, and then basically through this internship program be able to create things and numbers that's actually astronomical in terms of savings just by being able to create solutions in Power Platform. But it seems like there's a lot of appetite there to have more things like that highlighted specifically in healthcare, right? So it's definitely really good feedback, and we definitely learn a lot when we hear it too. Is one thing for us to promote the tools, is another to actually see it working or not working, right, in customer environments. So definitely very valid feedback there. Do we have Randall and team, like anybody else in the team here? I don't know if we have Joe or Sun Moon. I just wanted
We
to
have
do a quick.
We have
Uh,
Joe. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joe's here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Hey Joe.
Randall, I don't know if you can pin the speakers. I think they're all here. I try to pin them, but I think that's only for
Thanks.
me, not for the entire audience.
yeah, it's just for me as well. So let's do. I'll find Joe and I'll spotlight him.
Yes, thank you. Great
Yeah,
idea.
Awesome.
spotlight
Beautiful.
Joe for everyone.
That's
Thanks,
not
All
Bobby.
scary. Yeah,
right.
no, this is
Here.
helpful. Um, Greetings, everyone. Joe McAloon here, representing, I guess, part of the Humana crew that were able to make it to the 2024 Power Platform. First time that I was able to attend. So I think just from an overall perspective, there was it was wonderful cognitive overload. I think that's what somebody in the session was like, yeah, just session after session, really good information, but yes, just a lot to take in. So where in Humana I said I represent the business, and so I represent an interested party to see, my analytics teams, not directly to me, but I kind of oversee and help kind of lead and evangelize to these developer teams that are in some time of transition, and they are basically needing more than the default, more than citizen dev. They're needing that low code, pro code space to have fun, to play, to push, and to innovate. And so that's where coming to the platform or coming to the conference, I kind of came in with that in mind: is what's here, what's available, who can I talk to, who can I leverage, and first and foremost, I was getting to know our internal Humana team. We are big enough that it was I want to get to know these folks, because ultimately that's who I will go back from this conference experience and to leverage, and we did that in spades. So for sure, love the Humana team that was there. But again, I think others have shared, David and Gerald, is hearing from other customers, right? Other persons in the user group, absolutely powerful, because we have a push in, at least at Humana, we have a push both within the IT structure as well as the business structure. We have a roadshow, we have advocacy to accomplish, and the idea of taking back concepts like governance, taking concepts like how to scale. When I have thousands of environments, or soon to be thousands of environments, how to do that is going to be is going to be powerful. I represent up in the business, so I took a lot back of there's some functionalities coming down the pike that we up in the business would like to advocate for, and have to then partner with our IT Power Platform admin team, represented Joshua Brown here, and a number of others. They have to do the same within the IT structure, and so it's kind of a good, I'm calling it symbiosis, is the term that I'm coining it to be, is that we have to have enablement. We have to drive enablement, but we also have to have that governance appropriately, as David and Gerald have said. Healthcare, we work with restricted data, we work with restricted access, we work on the different spaces. So I think it's going to be a beautiful kind of dance with both business leadership, getting in front of them the power that we have here, pun intended, with this platform for enabling of business. But then also how, from an IT perspective, that we're checking all those important boxes. So a couple of sessions on the governance. I think one of the ones that I found was helpful was Publix. I think it was the scaling. It was like it was Friday morning. It was in one of the big grand ballrooms, and Publix came and kind of talked about their onboarding experience, from how to go from a citizen dev or the default to then go to how to appropriately maybe onboard ALM, onboard new environments. And it was a really great, just a broad scale picture of how I think I took the most pictures in that section, because I'm basically in turn taking this up to the business and showcasing it and yelling at the top of my lungs of like, hey, this is a great opportunity here. And so we've already done that. Yesterday, I went to some senior levels up in the business to showcase, hey, there's some things coming from the Power Platform that you need to be aware of, and they are going to be, powerful to leverage and to seek that advocacy. And so far, it's been a great good feedback from them, letting them know that, oh yeah, there are some changes coming that will tick those boxes for our governing bodies. They'll be appeased, but then the enablement will take place. So I think those are some broad brushstrokes, why I was there, what I took back, and we're already seeing some fruits. So really good to see.
That's awesome, Joe. If I may follow up, and I would open this up too after you chime in, Joe, in terms of what you see, because governance is obviously a really hot topic even in this panel today, right? Like to your point, if we don't have it right, then the enablement that comes after it's going to be lagging, right? I'd love to see if you have any other particular capabilities or, stories like Publix that you have picked up on is like, hey, this is just kind of a must for us to be able to figure out because it's worked so well with other companies that I could potentially champion on my own. Joe, is there anything else specifically that you can share in terms of like, oh man, that was just such a good light bulb moment for me, and I think everybody needs to start thinking about it in this way.
Um, as far as a particular session, I think it was RSM was bringing basically innovation, the topic of innovation, and I think they touted that rather boldly that there were no product demos in that session. It was all kind of soft skill, how to grow a mindset in the business on innovation. And that was crucial as well, because that's exactly what I'm here to do, which is I need to change the way that we look at this buzzword innovation, right? And so that was even helpful. Went up and had some good communication there of, what pieces were there buzzwords that I needed to use in these presentations? Is there, ways that I can, who in the business do I need to go network with, right? And so I think it is a mindset shift in the business because they need to see it that, hey, there are some things that you need to leverage to innovate and to push the envelope, particularly in the Gen AI spaces. And so we have to be able to advocate for that. So I think that's probably the only thing that I found from a kind of another aha moment was, changing that growth mindset in regards to innovation. So that's it for me, Bobby.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Joe. I mean, at this point, like, I'd love to even get, and if you're not on the quote unquote panel, I think we can, Randall, probably keep it organic here, right? Like, anybody want to come off mute, and I'd love to know, like, hey, what is your highlight, maybe from like new announcements or capabilities or something that just really struck at your core in terms of what you got the most out of from the conference perspective. Would love to hear your thoughts.
I think one thing that I'd like to see, especially with the new plan designer, is these tools being available to the general everyday users. I think the push around helping how we can help people learn to be basic developers and kind of doing the right thing from the get-go, and any tools that can help with that. And ideally, I'll just say a solid business analyst is gold to me for any company. If someone who can be able to interview and squeeze like all the requirements out of stakeholders and is very practiced in that, it really, like, I mean, to a developer, any developer, whether it's a citizen developer or a pro developer, it just, with the rapid aspect of Power Platform, really just accelerates development opportunities around that. So utilizing tools that you're building into the platform to help accelerate ideation and being able to do process generation, all that kind of stuff up front, around that, for something that's actually built, and being able to conceptualize that really, really, really helps on that. And so kind of that plan designer is kind of that right direction for a citizen dev to say, hey, let's conceptualize, let's build out a plan, let's build out use cases around that type of thing. Just is the step right direction, because the generally everyday user is just very undisciplined around that, and it's really really easy to be improper when building solutions in Power Platform.
I'd love to take that a little bit further from David from here, because
please.
I agree with a lot of things that David just said, but for the folks that know me, that know I'm a realist, skeptist, whatever you want to call it, even from the Microsoft folks, y'all know that. And I think there's something to be said. One of the figures that stood out to me is 1 billion apps, right, the next couple of years. And a lot of these features are all about accelerating development, particularly around people that maybe aren't technologists. They don't come from a software development background. So we're enabling them to create more impactful things, which is great, but it doesn't help them from an understanding knowledge around best practices. Yes, these tools will help create better, but it doesn't give them the guidance they need on what's proper software development. How do I do proper testing? How do I manage access and control? So you're taking still business users, very much the citizen development story, and trying to abstract away what people go to school for years on and build entire careers around. I don't want us to get too lost in the development hype and lose track of that foundational knowledge and trying to abstract things. At the same time, growth is great, and if testing and other things around SDLC and that sort of thing can keep up with it, if the development features are going up, testing features should be going up right with it. But there's another thing that needs to be going up right with it, and it's governance and security. If we're supposed to, as customers, manage 1 billion apps in the next however many years, we need better tools. I actually don't want Humana to grow at an accelerated pace until I figure out how to manage what we have today at scale. So I love where Microsoft's taking the product. I think it's great that more people are going to be able to enter the space, but I want to bring some healthy skepticism to how do we do this in a way that protects the enterprises themselves.
We're in the same boat, 100%.
Yeah, one thing that I would have really actually liked Microsoft to do is to, especially in the healthcare industry, probably in the finance industry, or even government industry, is to ask for copies, if allowed, for our secure application development guidelines and standards and procedures that we have, and be able to map Power Platform to that. Like, I can tell you, it would have probably saved me months worth of education if there was, even the well architected doesn't go far enough to like how detailed some of these documents are in these controls and processes, and being able to map out things that are in the trust, things that are a part of our EULA, all that kind of stuff. To be able to map all that out would really, really, really help. Just like where it's natively secure and where does like our people that vet these solutions need to pay attention to.
Ooh, can I pop back in? I want to keep going with this,
Yeah.
David.
Yeah.
So something you said is actually something I talked about with someone earlier this week, right?
Yeah.
Here's a question: is Power Platform what's kind of required for core infrastructure, right? For something to be considered mission critical capable, it should be. We typically manage it through like infrastructure with code, right?
Mm-hmm.
By that definition alone, Power Platform is actually not capable of running core workloads, which is just an interesting observation.
Mm-hmm.
But taking that train of thought a little way down the line here, where are the gaps from an enterprise criticality standpoint, right? It's almost up to the customer in a way to dig into the product and assess what are typically enterprise standards, where are the gaps, right? Where do we have to build something to bridge versus what is native in the product? And Microsoft, I love y'all, and I know none of y'all are like probably MPG, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. But there's almost a lack of transparency there for a reason, and I understand it, right? You can't come out and say we're lacking in this space because folks like Salesforce will say, "Oh, are you? Okay, let me go ahead and build a feature that addresses that and try to one-up you in the market." I get it. You can't. You're trying to keep a competitive advantage, but at the same time, it's not fair to the customers to try to figure out the gaps in your product, right? So I just want to take that a little step further and say, having that well-architected framework, but if we're going to be putting more and more critical workloads on here, and you want us to adopt faster, make it easier for us to do it.
Bobby, I feel like we need
Yeah,
to invite a PG team member to hear directly from the customer. This is valuable feedback.
for sure.
And
I mean,
I gave some
oh,
feedback, and there's a lot of operational stuff that can be done, but like, for a team that, security matters, I don't think connecting Power Platform to the rest of how our infrastructure works is there's a lot of red tape, to deal with that. And it takes a huge amount of time to make that happen. And it would be great to have a little bit more synergy, like recognizing big organizations have a lot of red tape. How can we reduce that red tape? How we can have better integrations between, the platform as a service with Power Platform operationally, so governance can be addressed. Because like my team is like, we have a capacity challenge, and I said, hey guys, you just need to write a bunch of scripts and open all the doors so we can do whatever we need to do to manage this. But it should be easier. This should be a lot easier with just a few scripts. It can just really increase the baseline around some of these things. So I just used like an example is like, wouldn't it be great is at the environment level, we can turn on integration between Power Platform and Azure AD. So then when someone creates a security role, and it auto provisions a team directly in Azure AD. And it also creates that relationship. So now any kind of access request process that we have with Azure AD, and a lot of people use SailPoint and that kind of stuff, it can follow that synergy with it. And we don't have to build a bunch of scripts that have to do all of that stuff. So it's stuff like that from a PG standpoint. I think that there's not a lot of work in order to create that synergy around that can help streamline some of those types of things.
I mean, this is, I think, the feedback that's absolutely need to be put with the right people, right? David and Joshua. I mean, I think to me, like, there are some things to your point that could already make those things happen. Like, to your point, like, hey, is there a way to onboard people into a security group and have them put into a Dataverse team? Sure. Can we make it easier? Absolutely. Right. And I think that the point that's made before, like, we can't really too excited a lot of times in terms of innovation on the making side if we can't keep the rapid innovation as just as quick, if not quicker, on the governance side as well, right? Because you have to be comfortable on your side, and there's a lot of investment obviously on that side of the world too to help also use generative AI to be able to keep up not just the making part of the world, but really keep you at the healthy and compliant state, right? So I think there's a lot there to unpack. I would also even say, like, hey, is there something that we can provide today outside of just Power Platform, but inside of the Microsoft ecosystem that can help you, right? Because I know that in your side of the world, you care about not just how we secure, but it's all about getting authorization to operate, right? Like in the various pocket. And a lot of those are really compliance-based security control, right? Like I would tell people like compliance are not security, right? Like they're kind of going hand in hand together, but you can be compliant and not be secured. You can be really secured and not be compliant, right? Like I think we can help in a lot of stuff there too, that might not be even in the Power Platform story. For example, like the M365 Purview Compliance Manager will be able to help actually get like compliance security controls that maps into how we do things inside of the Power Platform slash Microsoft ecosystem from a vendor perspective, right? So to your point, David, what is it that just comes out of the box as a security vendor versus what you have to do as an enterprise customer to actually be able to meet you to full compliance, right? I always like put the analogy of like owning a car, right? If I own a car, it is the car manufacturer's job to give me a way to lock that car and alarm it, right? But if I don't lock that car and alarm it, that's my fault, right? But my car has to come up with an alarm and ability to lock, right? And that's the dance that we have on the compliance side, that we have a way to potentially get you there already to be able to get that compliance and security buy-in from security officer perspective. But I also challenge that in saying just because we can help you do that doesn't mean that you're actually more secure in the process, right? So it's like it's kind of this dance and saying like, yes, we need to make sure to support you. So your CISOs and your security officers say this is actually a stable, secure platform to continue to onboard workload into. But at the same time, we have to have innovations and pocket of opportunity to build our area to actually be enterprise grade and secure to help you get all of this workload in there. So there's a lot there in there. I don't think we can just throw that away, right? Like Randall and team. So I think what it sounds like, it might be a good sort of like brainstorming session if the group is up for it. And we obviously have a lot of people on the governance side of the world that their job is really to make the onboarding and security posture of the Power Platform ecosystem more ready for regulated industries like the ones that you live in. So if you are for it, I would say Randall, Liz, and team, let's go ahead and see if we can actually broker a conversation and have like a healthy conversation like this and say like, hey, what are the top feedback that we have to make our security governance story even more applicable for the customers here?
I
Bobby,
mean,
can I add on
Randall, I'm
something there?
thinking maybe like a series, like a governance series, like your
Hmm.
Power Hug, where we can have Joshua
Yeah,
and Joe and David interview our teams, right? Because they bring that
yeah,
industry perspective to the way that
absolutely,
we do things.
absolutely.
If I could add on something there, Bobby. So one of the things I love was something that you said, right? We're very specific product focused right now, right? But let's taking a step back and thinking about the broader perspective of where the industry is headed. We're not actually really talking about, for the most part, Power Platform adoption. It's a product. It's just a product. It could be gone
Sure.
a couple of years from now. Microsoft rebrands, moves on. What we're really asking our organizations is to change the way they think about solving problems and saying, okay, IT, you guys are usually the workhorses of solving problems with technical solutions. We're going to flip that paradigm and put things back in the business. And Power Platform just happens to be one of the leading tools on the market to do that. But it's not the only thing, especially when we look at like agents and
Sure.
co-pilots and things coming out of the Microsoft 365 space. And the landscape is just going to broaden. Most of my time as the product manager at Humana isn't dealing with the product. It's dealing with stakeholders and cultural realignment. And how do we do this as an organization and getting folks in IT and risk to say,
Oh,
maybe we should allow the business to do more. But if we do, how do we do that? And it's something
hmm.
that hasn't ever been done before. And there's not a blueprint to follow. And so every customer is actually trying to fight this same battle, I feel like, in their own organizations. And yes, every organization is a little bit different. But we're talking about a cultural change and not just a product adoption. And
Absolutely.
that's why I said you're thinking about this from a broad landscape. How can we look across all the available tools that we have to enable those folks in the business to do more, to solve problems themselves in a safe way? Power Platform is part of it, Purview is part of it, M365 is part of it. How can we build the guardrails around it to make IT comfortable and the business accelerating to solving problems?
Yeah, and just to add on that, and a narrative that I have been pushing in our organization is, what are we going to do around low code 1.0 solutions? So, the access databases that have been created for and been using since like 2003, because for whatever particular business need, those are the original low code solutions with it, and the transformation aspect. But then there's also the aspect of what does that mean in GDPR and data privacy and California Act on maintaining these existing types of solutions in the organization? Are companies actually complying with those regulations, with those solutions existing how they currently do right now? Is Power Platform a medium to address that? Utilizing Dataverse and that type of thing. I think there's a story to tell there, especially in the healthcare industry around it, because a lot of those solutions are full of PHI data.
I think you both are spot on, right? Like to me, like there is technology is the easy part, right? Like processing people are the really hard part, right? And I think to me, I love that I'm talking to a bunch of folks. It seems like our IT service enabler, right? Like the people that hold the gate to be able to enable other people to accomplish this mission at the masses, right? That historically speaking, in the regular industry, those groups are really closed off, right? Like, no, we're just going to say no all day, right? So I love that there's a healthy conversation here because to me, for every no that you're saying, right, like these businesses are not, the needs are not just going to go away, right? Like they're going to the points that's being made, they're going to go find solutions somewhere, right? So to your point, David, like if there's like PHI is kind of core part of your business, right? Like it's going to occur, like, you're going to have privacy related data living in your ecosystem, regardless of where it sits, right? Now, would you rather for it to just be sent on an Excel spreadsheet and an email somewhere? Or is it better to have a centralized control that you could, like, hey, maybe not get perfect for the first stab at it, but be able to tweak moving forward? Or is it safer to get it sent out there to the ether? So definitely valid. I think we definitely have a go-to here to make sure that we support you in the following sessions to have healthy conversations like this, to even send a lot of the feedback that we have. I mean, we probably want even more specific, right? Like, hey, what are things that we're doing today in the security construct and managed environments that potentially is helpful, and what may be needing more work in terms of being able to help even push the easy buttons that's going to get you guys to broad enablement faster and more secure.
Yeah, I think I'm going to transition off of that last statement, Bobby. I think we want to see if maybe some of y'all would be interested in having an interview with some of the customers that may be presented at the conference. So if we can get them to come to one of these sessions, albeit not healthcare, but experience with Power Platform in their industry. So maybe Publix, Joe, you were enlightened by their conversation. Maybe we have a conversation or interview with them, with one of you helping lead that interview and comment about what you got out of it, and have them come to this group and share how they innovated, how they grew Power Platform. Likewise, we have Boston Scientific in the past. We can bring them back for more of a discussion about how they grew Power Platform, governance, security, all that, how they changed the culture, that type of thing. If you're open to that, thumbs up, hearts, thumbs down, whatever you want there. All right, cool. We're getting some. So we'll try to see what we can do there in terms of getting some of those speakers to present, because there's also some other ones that I heard from other customers at the conference as well that were just blown away by certain companies that presented. So we'll try to get them to come here and present as well, and just maybe have a more interactive conversation.
Yeah,
So thank you for
Randall,
all your comments. Oh, go ahead, Liz.
if I can just interject, so I know we have a lot more people here. So if you are open to sharing, just kind of typing in the chat, like, what was your favorite session? Like, what's the one, like, Joe, that kind of really blew you away? Be curious to see what that looks like across the community here, and see if there's any patterns there as well, in addition to governance and some of the cultural change that Joe and Joshua were talking about.
Yeah, any sessions or aha moments? Close out with that.
I'm always say I told the group that I'm uncomfortable with dead air, so I just have to say something if it's okay with the group while y'all are thinking about your favorite session, if it's okay. I love to just say that, hey, I know from a Microsoft side we have a saturation of the word Copilot, right? Like, but I want to make it practical in terms of saying, like, hey, I really don't think, in case you haven't caught on, like, that this generative AI thing is kind of a fad, right? Like, so you're starting to see things like Power Apps Planner, where we're moving away from just being a pair programmer, but really to have almost like a pair consultant, right? Like, are we going to get it perfect to begin with? The answer is absolutely not. But we're going to try to get there in terms of being able to have generative AI, and regardless what you do, right? Whether that's admin and governance, planning the right things up front, getting the access control right, getting the data table, not just really empowering people just in creating the app, although that part is going to continue to get honed in. But I love this double down of generative AI everywhere to be in context of what you're doing to get you more productive in that pocket of opportunity. So I love seeing the strong momentum behind that, and the continuous momentum building it into the product.
The challenge is going to be keeping our AI governance boards moving at the speed Microsoft is as it starts to weave into the product. It's already becoming, I'm excited for where Microsoft's taking it. I can't keep our organization moving at the speed Microsoft's baking features into the product. And so depending on how they're being enabled and how they're being governed and controlled, this feedback I gave Sean and team is, I need blanket access. We want to explore the features, but we're going to have to explore some of the features at our own pace, because we just can't get our internal stakeholders moving fast enough. So with you, love it. Excited for the future.
And just to add to that, I think it would help around like risk statements, like, hey, we want to enable this, but like providing direction on how to articulate risk when you're launching out this feature around that. I know that's a painful aspect for Microsoft, like, hey, we want to do that, but I think it really helps is that, hey, if we move forward with this, this is the risk that company's introducing. And if the company's fine with accepting that risk, okay, great. Just means someone's accept that risk. There's nothing wrong with that as long as the company accepts that. And I think writing a narrative around those types of risks on enabling some of these AI functionality would be super helpful.
Even if
I'd
it's
love,
behind closed doors. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
yeah. Well, I want to know more, Dave and Joshua, in terms of what we can do better there too, right? Because if our service trust portal and the documentation and the interactions that you have internally here with the Microsoft team, if there's some improvement there that we can help to get it across the way for security covered organization, would love to hear it for
Why
sure.
isn't there a co-pilot for your service trust portal so we can ask a simple question
Oh
through
man,
thousands
that
upon
is, yeah,
thousands
that's
of
a good.
documentation?
Well, there you go. That should get a thumbs up.
Ooh, that's great.
That should get a thumbs up.
There it is.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I hate to cut the conversation, but we're gonna transition off here. Just remind everyone, fourth Thursday of every month, at least for October, November, and December will be the third Thursday. Lily Ho next month will be presenting automation with infrastructure using Power Platform. Provide the feedback. How was this session? We want to hear, like, do you want to hear more, see more, maybe some additional decks or videos, whatever you want there in terms of recaps. But reach out at aka.ms/powerhug-feedback. And as always, you'll see this session again on YouTube. So thank you all for participating. Your videos will be up there, so hopefully you don't mind that. But again, you can go back and review this, and as will all future sessions be on YouTube as well. Feel free to reach out to Scott, Mary, or myself. Other than that, thank you, Bobby, Liz, Josh, David, Gerald, Joe, and everyone for participating
Everybody
today.
that contributed, yes.
Thank you.
Cool.